Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Revival Season 1, Episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Martha's side of things, as we kind of see that she's kind of going through what seems to be almost like a little bit of a psychosis situation. I was initially wondering if it was like whatever they used to knock her out. It seems like maybe in the end it's just some tranquilizer in general, but I was wondering maybe it was infused with some of the stuff that that doctor who works for the CDC that took over for Ibrahim. That I thought maybe it was something. It wasn't in Carla that her concoction. I was wondering if it was something mixed with that caused this. But Aaron's wife later on is like, no, it seems like it's stress induced. But she's seeing her mom, and it's understandable with everything that's going on, piecing stuff together, getting close to finding out and solving like what happened to you. But more so than anything, the one person you trusted, especially like Rhodey, and I brought this up last episode, it's like this is the person you turn to when you felt like you couldn't turn to your family. He was there for you, and have that person be the one who betrays you, you know, especially when you felt so alone in the world, and especially like one of the last times you felt so alone, and the last person you had that real connection with was your mom. And so it was just like, that's why it cut so deep. And so now she's seeing her mom, and her mom's kind of like I guess like all the negative thoughts basically personify. So when Rhodey comes in to try and apologize, it's like, yeah, they tortured me, this and that, and it's just like, I'm sorry. And her mom was like, oh, look at it, that's what they do. They'll, you know, make up whatever excuse so that you will take them back. And then M in her state snaps his neck, you know, which he doesn't blame her, because he's also like, I need to get out of here, but also like, I am responsible. He's beating himself up of like, I sold her out regardless of what happened. It's like, I care about M and I turned on her, you know. So he does want to try and make it right. This is the episode of people trying to make things right. So but Aaron's wife ends up talking to M, and like I said, it's basically M's like negativity about herself, because like her mom saying all the stuff about like, oh, good thing I wasn't alive to see my daughter grow up, continue living on to be a homewrecker, sleeping with a married man while his wife is getting cancer treatment, and she's got her own guilt about all that. And so we get finally get the revelation about what happened. You know, my big question going forward had been like, well, we learned later, initially M blames herself, and then in later episodes we found out that Dana did. So for what happened to their mom, Patty. And now we found out what happened. Basically, Dana got into a fight at the bar or at Nella's place because someone was giving her a lot of flack for the Black Deer case. And then they called up, like she called her mom, who said, was like, yo, call your dad, because Patty didn't like driving in winter, but their dad didn't pick up. And so M and her mom went to go pick her up, and she was the one driving. When a deer was in the middle of the road, she swerved, and it ended up being an accident. But now that puts things in perspective, where Dana feels responsible, because it's like, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have had to come pick me up. Like, if I had been able to control myself and not let anyone goad me into anything, or just losing my temper like that, you wouldn't have been there. M feels the most responsible because she was driving. And then I was initially like, now we know why Wayne avoids the topic too, because he didn't pick up. And if he picked up, he would, who knows how things would have played out. But now, later in the episode, near the end, we find out why Wayne didn't pick up. And the reason he didn't pick up is because he was having an affair with Diane. You're like, wow. I don't want to spoil something else. There's a TV show I was watching where we find out like a pretty significant thing happens, a pretty monumental thing happens in the world. And while like this character was away from his family because he was secretly off having an affair, it just kind of gave me that same thing. I mean, this is an old show, so the example I'm thinking of, but another one, like, didn't the same thing happen in Revolution? Like someone was having an affair basically when all the power went out in the world. I don't remember. But like I said, that's not the show I was thinking of. It was a different show. But like I said, I don't want to spoil that show because it's kind of a reveal about certain things. But either way. So I just thought that was interesting to find that out. Now Dana's kind of finding that out at literally the worst possible moment in the story. But, you know, that's tends to be when stuff comes out. Because Ken, you understand why he's doing what he's doing. But it's like, man, every time you turn around an opportunity not to be a douchebag, Ken, you are one. But it's also like, hey, I get it. It's kind of everyone's out for themselves, like self-preservation type of thing, especially considering, as the episode keeps reiterating, this is technically Wayne's fault. He's the one that set so much of this in motion because Ken initially is talking to Diane about, you know, how, like, it's like, okay, the government's not going to touch you. But I'm like, yeah, but they still kept her. I was like, you don't think they're just going to let her go, do you? Because they're promising, like, oh, once we get the person responsible for killing the Czech brothers, which we never checked back in with their mom to find out how she felt about all of this. I think that's kind of interesting that was never kind of explored, but I guess it's like, I don't know, maybe that's, you know, if that's something straight from the comics, maybe the comics has time to explore it, but maybe some of that stuff that was kind of left on the cutting room floor where it's just like, either it just was never really discussed, maybe that's a change they made for the TV, you know, stuff like that. I'm curious, anyway, getting back to it, Ken ends up telling Diane about what deal he made, you know, and it's like, well, that's not right. She's just a child. And it's like, even if it was for my sake, I don't appreciate you selling out Martha regardless. Because it's like, yeah, we're all in this together. Like they're going to torture her just like, I mean, she's like, I'm hearing people scream all the time from the experiments. And yeah, I might be spared from it, but that's only for now. Like that deal is only going to go so far because this whole thing is about keeping, revivers under control, and it's like if you can hurt them and put them through pain, it's like then it's all worth it. So as long as like Diane complies, like she probably never would, but still like that will always be this hanging guillotine above her and any other reviver's head. So Ken ends up going to Wayne and Dana for help, you know, because it's like, well, because Diane had overheard that they're going to be shipping off the revivers to who knows where. So it's like they got to make a move before it's too late. Then, you know, I got to backtrack a little bit and talk about other parts of the episode where Dana and Wayne led, you know, a charge on Blaine's facility, who he ended up picking up Ibrahim, because I was like, oh, it is interesting that we didn't see him at all last episode. It's like, oh, because Blaine has had him, if not the entire time, at least most of the time. And so they end up having a pretty lengthy conversation where Blaine has kind of been reading through Ibrahim's notes. And luckily, I guess a lot of stuff that Ibrahim has figured out or is at least working on, it's not, I guess, expressly laid out in that book. So he's like, because he's like, right, I know some things, I have some answers, but I want to get the full picture because that's the only way I'm going to stop evil. You fight evil with the knowledge of understanding it. And so it ends up being this conversation about, you know, religion and everything, where it's like, why Blaine does what he does, because he's not some fraud or charlatan. Like from a very young age, he's a devout person. He does believe. Like it seems like, oh, this is like you're a snake oil salesman, but it's like no, he kind of believes the bullshit he spews because it's not bullshit to him, but for him it's like, oh, I'm fighting a holy war and I've just been waiting for my moment. I was always chosen. This was always going to be. It's a situation of his belief kind of like that he's acquired from his dad's kind of crazy, mixed with his need to repair his family reputation and feel like he let his father down, of like, I was supposed to be the chosen one. Because we learned from Wayne the reason why the whole Blaine having stigmas on his hand, where that came from. Apparently his dad put nails through his hand because it's like, oh, to prove my son's the chosen one. And it's like, yeah, your dad was the snake oil salesman who took a lot of people's life savings. They didn't really get into it, but they did say, like, his mom ran away, Blaine's mom ran away, and his dad got killed. I guess maybe someone killed him because of, like, the whole, you know, he stole all the money people had, and so someone got him. And so Blaine's kind of been living in the shadow of that, and that this was going to be his opportunity, where it's like maybe on some level he has some good intentions just like Wayne, which I think that's supposed to be the parallel of, you the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and you might have the best of intentions, but it gets warped along the way. And in Blaine's case, it got warped into like the glory of, I was right, I am special, I'm going to be the one to lead a charge, that whole situation. um but Dana and Wayne, once they get in there and they grab Blaine, they end up trying to get him to confess to Rose and, M's murder, which he says like, yo, I didn't murder M. In fact, I saw her on the bridge, and then after I saw her, it's when I saw that light. But when I went over to that light, it was already gone. And then when I came back, Dana was gone. That's his story. And he says, I would never hurt Rose. We were friends. So I am curious, what was it? Because that's an element to this we still haven't really discovered, is what element of them being friends, like what correlated that, what connected that. I mean, especially because like they brought it up last episode, his family was constantly trying to buy the land off of the Black Deers. So I don't know if there was some connection born because of that or what. But even I was like, yeah, it didn't seem like Blaine did seem like the killer type, but it's like the car is there, so I'm like, how is it that the car that has her body is there? It's like, I mean, I guess if someone put it in the back, like left it there, and you bought, like the fact that, I guess if someone snuck it into your junkyard, you're just gonna be like, oh, it's there, and I'm not gonna take notice of it. But I'm like, I guess if something's sitting in your junkyard, you're not gonna be like, oh, let me check the trunk to make, like, why would anyone put anything anywhere, So I guess the point was always to frame him if her body was ever discovered, or maybe they thought no one ever would discover it, but even if they did, like I said, it's fall on Blaine. So Dana is thinking about it and talking with Ibrahim, who's like, yes, Blaine is crazy, but his hate is towards the revivers. That doesn't seem to be, why would he kind of hurt M, like before her being, like her now makes sense, but before he would have had no reason to. Same thing for Rose. Like, it doesn't seem like he goes after young women. His beef is with revivers in general. So I'm like, what would be his motivation for all that? So, because they're saying that he's the one that paid Brent, but he's like, I don't have $10,000. But it's like, yeah, you're going to buy the Black Deer family land. And he was like, yeah, but I don't have that money. And it's like, where'd you send that money? He was like, don't worry about it. And May actually looked into it and found out he actually is the one that supplied the reward when Rose's killer was found, when they believed it to be her dad, Jesse. And was like, oh, interesting. But then, like, because Jesse got away, like, that reward ended up get returned to him. But it seems like it was something related to indigenous people. Like, I think May was saying that he sent it there, but I think she also said like the money never actually got sent there. So where did it go? This kind of goes back to what I was bringing up of just, I think the governor is behind this. Once again, like, the land would have been government owned land. Like, it would have reverted to the government if Rose had moved. So that's why I was like, I guess they needed her dead because they didn't want Jesse to try. If she's alive, Jesse would be able to convince her to stay, and they'd never be able to get in the land. So, but with her dead, like that, because I mean, I think the government does just straight up own that land, and we never really talked about that angle to it. Like, what happened now that she's dead? Because it's like the land never reverted back to Jesse upon her death or anything like that. So does that mean is it still kind of in like probate type of situation, or does the government just straight up own it? Like, I don't think they ever clarified like the status of that land. Speaking of May, she had this interesting conversation with Abraham in the episode where, it's like, oh, he's like, as a scientist, here I am, like, looking through the Quran. It's like, should I, as a scientist, really be looking to, like, religious text for answers? But May's like, dude, all of that's out the window when people have literally come back from the dead, So, and she ended up bringing up this kind of very heartbreaking point where she was like, me and Rose had this whole thing of if either one of us died, the other would come back to kind of not haunt the other one, but just to be like proof of like, hey, the afterlife does exist. And then Ibrahim's, he's like, have you heard from her? And it's like, not yet, which is like, oh, that's so heartbreaking, because I guess there is a part of her probably still. It's just, once again, it's the heartbreaking element that we know. It came up like in the first or second episode of the series about how people who loved ones missed it by a hair of like outside of the range of if you died up until like December 18th, you got revived type of situation. You know, if you died in a specific time frame, you got to come back, right? But, you know, it's got to suck where it's like, yeah, all these people are back, but the person you love is not back. That has to be a rough thing to deal with. But also, like, even on that spiritual level of you haven't seen her ghost, like, not knowing if it's just when the person's gone, they're gone. You don't want to believe that, but it's like the fact that she hasn't come back to you in that regard, kind of, in any capacity, whether it is just for a minute, whether it's for a while, it, you know, just that confirmation would be nice, you know, just to know, like, wherever she is in the afterlife or whatever, if there is one, knowing that she's okay. I think it's interesting too, because that ties into like the Lester of it all too, considered like, well, tangentially in the regards of he ended up running into Blaine's militia because he was looking for Wanda, and he's just kind of like, yeah, Wayne, this is all your fault. You're supposed to be looking after people. It's like, no one pays any attention to us because we're old. It's like, Wanda came back, even when she lost her Social Security, she was just trying to live her life, and I was just trying to help her out. This is my friend. We still had a few good more years in our lives, and that kind of all upended. Like, Wanda wasn't bothering anyone. She was just trying to live her life. She got a second chance, and she just wanted to kind of enjoy it, you know? Really heartbreaking considering, well, at the time I'd said that I didn't know for sure if Wanda was dead, and we got an answer because they ultimately ended up finding the videotape. And they haven't pieced it together because Abraham has his experience with the creature and how it meshed with Jordan. They also don't know what happened to Jesse, because I guess they're thinking maybe now that Jesse ended up doing what he did, like he just left, they don't know that Jesse met with his creature too. So that's 2 out of 3 examples showing if you meet your being, your quote unquote angel, it's kind of like you finally finding peace. It's this whole living with so much regret, you're kind of given a second chance, and then once you're kind of finally at peace, now that you have your second chance, then you're able to just kind of move on peacefully. Maybe there's something more to it. Maybe there's something a little sinister to it. Who knows? But then the Wanda of it all, as we see her body in the aftermath of it, it is a thing of that wasn't her angel. In fact, we find out later on that her angel, the angel that killed her, was Jesse's. There is one that pops up this episode and we don't see it. I'm thinking that's not... The timing made me immediately think, I think that's M's. I think that's Martha's angel. Especially where the episode ends up. By the end, it feels like that's kind of what that is, but we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, they're kind of like, well, we don't have time to worry about this, like, because Abraham throwing it out there, like, it's like, wait, is this an alien? It's like, well, we don't have time to worry about that because we've got to save these revivers before they get moved by the general. But also, Blaine's militia is going to be making moves. They have plans to attack as well. So it's like, we've got to use this to our advantage. So they're going to pretend. Ken warns the soldiers about an attack from the militia, so they're on guard for it, and then they're going to like create a distraction, make it seem like the militia is attacking, and use that as an opportunity to save the revivers. So ultimately, Abraham goes to Carla and gives her water from the creek that basically supercharge all the revivers, help them recover from whatever, they've been put through, and then also like, make sure they're strong enough to, basically bust themselves out. So starts with Rhodey and then like everyone else, and they work together and manage to get away. But the problem is Martha ended up getting grabbed by Tyler, which I think it's so fascinating why Tyler decided to do that. I guess because unlike the others, she was separated, so maybe he thought and knew and maybe heard some of the talk about I mean, who knows if we know the governor got that footage. That's why they were after Martha in the first place. But like, maybe they heard whispers about what she was doing. Because like, we don't know the time frame of it all. Like, Abraham went to talk to Blaine one last time because he needed answers, because he's trying to figure this all out. And it's like, right, the light appeared after he saw M, but then when the light disappeared, so did M. Abraham's thinking is this all started with Martha. She's the key to all of this for whatever reason. Who knows why she's kind of like the centerpiece to all of this. Blaine used it as an opportunity to get away. The fact, like I said, the fact is that Tyler ended up saving her. Like, why? Like I said, it has to be because she was isolated from the rest of the other revivers, so she was the easiest to grab, and she just happens to be the person Blaine wants. So not unless Blaine did get in contact with Tyler upon escape and let him know, like, yo, find Martha. And because I can't remember the time frame wise whether or not, like, by the time Tyler had gotten to Martha, I think Blaine had already grabbed Abraham and bounced from the station, because most of their forces were out in the field dealing with this reviver rescue mission. So I doubt there was many like trained officers left. It might have just been like the receptionist who like works behind the desk. It might have just mainly been her, maybe some other people, whatever the case may be. He managed to get away. We also had whoever it was shooting the militia people, because they were waiting nearby for the water, because they're like, oh, this is where the angel popped up, maybe it'll pop up here. And it does, but then someone in like camo gear is blipping them, and you're like, what's that about? Like, once again, is that a military person doing that? I don't think it was the general. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be. It probably was someone else, but not like, could it be someone that works under her or works directly for the governor? Like I said, I've been on the governor train for a while. I brought that up earlier, but it's like, I just feel like she's got to be part of why this all happened and why she co-signed like Wayne doing what he did. I mean, she has other reasons too, but I'm just, it feels, for all that to kind of line up the way it did, it's just too suspicious to me. But they, like I was bringing up, they rescued all the revivers, but Ken, self-preservation and all that, he ends up trying to take Diane and leave, but it's like, no, we're supposed to be in this together. Ken, help us rescue Martha. He was like, dude, don't blame me. This is actually, because, Wayne's like, this is your fault. And he's like, dude, it's your fault. You're the one that set this all in motion. And then he, as I brought up, dropped the big bomb about him and Diane having an affair. And then he bounces. Once again, I understand it. You're frustrated. You got what you needed, so you're not going to help Ken out, even though it's like you guys were so close at one point in time. But now we understand why your relationship is so fractured, because you find out the guy slept with your wife. Your best friend slept with your wife. So it's like understandable why there's been such animosity between them. It's so interesting considering like Wayne's grandstanding that it's like you kind of have no leg to stand on morally. Like, no wonder Ken kind of wanted to never budge on anything you said. And you probably thought like, well, I'm in the right in this situation. Ken's only butting heads with me and not listening because of our personal issues, But it's like you should have, listened to Ken and backed down way back when, and we wouldn't be in this situation. Even Nella called him out. It's like, oh, you never cared about like the revivers. In fact, you were very anti-reviver until you found out Martha was one of them. Now all of a sudden you're pro. It's like, yeah, you only cared because you're changing your tune because you found out your daughter's one. Which obviously this whole thing leads to a very awkward conversation between Dana and Wayne, where Wayne says like, yeah, like me and your mom were already separated. And he's like, and for Dana, it's like, why didn't you ever say anything? And he's like, what's the point? She's like, what's the point? And then she really gets her dad to see the point, like leans into it. It's like, I have been blaming myself for 2 years because of what happened to your mom. M has been blaming herself for 2 years. It's because he didn't want to like acknowledge his part in it, because he was blaming himself too. And I think legitimately, if he told them the truth about it, he was scared that they would blame him as well. That's what it was. Because he's like, if I tell them the truth, they will blame me and they will never forgive me. And he didn't want to lose his daughters after losing Patty. So that's what that was. It was just a selfish reason why you didn't tell. You're not like, oh, it didn't matter. It's like, no, like, That's why I was so curious, like whether he was aware that M and Dana both blamed themselves. And I think that's probably a conversation Dana and M have never probably had, that they each both blame themselves respectively for what happened. I think Dana might know. Dana obviously knows that M does blame herself, but I don't know if M knows that Dana blamed herself, you know? And even if M did, her guilt over it would like be like, no, like it's not Dana, it's on me, it's 100% on me. And then sadly we had that line from Dana just in her frustration says, it should have been you. And you're like, well, that just put a death flag on Wayne. He's super dead. He's probably going to sacrifice himself to save M from whatever, but it's gonna, it's gonna be like that. And Martha's and Dana's gonna beat herself up over it because it's like her and her dad have not had the best relationship. They've made some strides to being, in a better place, but especially that line being like one of the last things you've ever said to your dad was, "It should have been you that died instead of mom." It's rough. And then there's also a part of him like, I can't believe you said that, but also like, I can't blame you for saying that because he probably sadly has felt that way too. And I've talked about this in other stuff, how the element of you could tell yourself something 1,000 times, whether it's just like a bad thing or a negative thing about yourself or an insecurity, it never cuts nearly as deep when you hear it from someone else. So he's probably thought that time and time again, and to literally hear Dana say it probably cuts it 5 times deeper and makes it feel even more true. But the episode ends with Blaine now having Martha and believing what Ibrahim said, that this all connects to her. And he's like, oh, you're the one that opened the gate to hell. And I hear aiming to send you back. Because I think, once again, that was Blaine's people trying to wait for the angel to pop up, and it did. But we don't know who that was, who killed all of them. And what happened to that angel? Did the government, like I said, that was someone in camo, so it might be a military person who snatched up the angel and is using it, especially now knowing like they might have figured out how Blaine was going to go about dealing with revivers and killing revivers. But the question then really remains is, who is it then? Who's the person that killed Martha and Rose? If it wasn't Blaine and if it wasn't Aaron, who did it? Not unless it was the general. That might be the interesting element of it all. Like, she might have been the one responsible, so this might not be her first time in Wasar. So, I don't know. She seems like the only other person at play that it could be. Like, I don't know. But like I brought up earlier in the episode, I believe the angel that rose this episode is M's, and I think that's going to be the conclusion of this. Her finally letting go and being at peace, and Dana and her dad having to let her go. Now that's going to be the worst timing potentially, when M might leave just when Dana and her potentially lose their dad. That's going to be the big concern. But it's also like, well, that angel might not be hers, and if it gets used on her, it will kill her. So if it's not hers, I wonder whose else it might be, and maybe we'll get at least some inkling of an answer of why this seems to all revolve around Martha specifically. We'll have to wait to see where the next episode takes us, the next episode being the season finale, so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and how this all wraps up. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.